My name is Fiona Wells, and I was 32 years old when I first learned what an empty chair sounds like. It is a heavy, quiet ring that echoes in your chest. I planned my wedding 14 months in advance, pouring my heart into every detail. I hand-addressed every envelope and tracked every RSVP in a spreadsheet at 6 in the morning before work. 85 invitations total. 42 went to my side of the family. I mailed them 4 months early. But 2 weeks later, my brother announced his engagement party on the exact same day, June 15th. When the day came, I walked down the aisle at a farmhouse in the Blue Ridge foothills, staring at empty seats. 3 people out of 42 showed up, and my dad did not walk me down the aisle. Instead of walking me down the aisle, my dad was at my brother's backyard barbecue, drinking a beer in a lawn chair. Yet he still sent me a text right as I was cutting my wedding cake. It said, "What did you do?" I read those words, smiled, and put my phone face down. But here's the thing they did not expect. I had been keeping that spreadsheet, and the day I shared it, everything changed. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge. Today, you and I are going to see what happens when you finally stand up to the people who tried to break you. To understand how I got here, we have to go back. I was 16 when I first filed my family's taxes. My mom handed me a shoebox of receipts she claims she did not understand, though she knew how to sign the check. My mother just did not want to do the actual work. That was always my role. I was the fixer, the translator, the responsible one who sat on hold with the insurance company for 45 minutes so she would not have to. I scheduled my father's dentist appointments. I compared car insurance quotes when my brother Garrett's rates spiked after his second fender bender. I was only 14 when I started organizing our holiday dinners because my mother said she was too tired, and I believed her. Garrett was 3 years older than me, but he lived a completely different life under the same roof. He got a car for his 16th birthday. When I turned 16, I was told we could not afford a second car. I rode the bus until I bought my own at 19 with tutoring money. My father, Donald, was a retired postal worker who lived by one rule: your mother knows best. He said it when my mother, Judith, decided Christmas dinner would be at our house every year. He said it when she gave Garrett the bigger bedroom. He even said it when I asked why my perfect report cards never made it onto the fridge. Somewhere during college, I started keeping a folder. I did not have a specific reason back then. It was just a collection of receipts, bank transfers, text messages, things I had helped with, and bills I had paid. A record of everything no one asked me to keep. I did not know its purpose yet, but I knew I needed it. Years later, I met Marcus Reed at a financial services conference in Atlanta, where he was presenting on data security. We ended up at the same table during lunch, and he asked what I was reading so intently on my phone. It was a text from my mother. Garrett's rent was overdue again, and she wanted to know if I could bail him out with $800. I had already sent Garrett $8,000 over the past 3 years. His car down payment, apartment deposit, and a dental bill he swore he would pay back in 2 weeks, which was 11 months ago. Marcus saw my expression and asked if it was bad news for my family. I just nodded. Then he asked me something no one in my family had ever asked. "Do they ever call just to check on you?" I opened my mouth, closed it, and realized I could not think of a single call that was not a request, a complaint, or a demand. Marcus did not push me for an answer. Instead, he just handed me a napkin because I had not even noticed the coffee I had spilled on the table. His family was entirely different from mine. His mother, Helen, was 63 years old and still sent handwritten birthday cards to everyone she had ever loved, including her local mail carrier. She tucked a $20 bill inside every single card, even for the adults. Marcus was 34 and still looked forward to getting his. He kept every single card in a shoebox in his closet, not as receipts or transfers, but as memories. After meeting him, I started tracking things differently. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop with tabs for family events and RSVPs. It was just organization, I told myself. He got down on one knee right next to the beautiful magnolia tree that had been blooming during both of our previous visits. The ring was a gorgeous, simple solitaire on a thin gold band. He looked up at me and said 4 things. I love you. I respect you. I choose you. Will you marry me? I said yes before he could even finish the sentence. I called my family from the parking lot, buzzing with excitement. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. I told her, "Mom, Marcus proposed. We are engaged." There was a long, cold pause. Then she just said, "Oh, that is nice," before immediately asking if I knew Garrett might get a promotion at the car dealership. I waited for a squeal or a question about the ring, but she just kept talking about Garrett. My brother Garrett responded to my text in our group chat with a single thumbs up emoji. 1 tap, absolutely no words. My father wrote back, "Congratulations, sweetheart," which ended up being the warmest thing anyone from my side of the family said to me. He still did not bother to call. The following weekend, Marcus's mother, Helen, threw an engagement dinner at her home for 12 people. She baked a 3-layer lemon cake from scratch, the same kind she had made for Marcus since he was a little boy. The frosting was uneven, the candles were mismatched, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. That night, I added a new row to my spreadsheet under the column for the Wells family response. Minimal. I did not judge them. I just recorded the facts. Planning the wedding took 14 months. Marcus and I chose a gorgeous restored farmhouse venue in the Blue Ridge foothills, about 90 minutes from Charlotte. It featured a garden terrace ceremony and an indoor reception with string lights and long wooden tables for 85 guests. I did what I always do. I made a meticulous plan. Save the dates went out 10 months early, and the actual invitations were sent 4 months before the wedding. I hand-addressed every single cream-colored envelope. I even taught myself calligraphy using online tutorials, practicing on scrap paper at our kitchen table for 3 weeks. Every envelope was sealed with a burgundy wax stamp. It was the first time I had spent so much effort on myself. But my mother offered 0 help. Garrett did not even bother to respond to the save the date. My father just said, "Sounds nice," and immediately asked if there would be enough parking. It was Helen who drove with me to 3 venue tours, and Helen who sat on the velvet bench at the bridal shop in South End when I tried on dresses. She cried when I stepped out in an ivory A-line dress with lace sleeves, pulling a tissue from her purse to tell me it was the one. My own mother claimed she was too busy to come. I never asked what kept her so busy because I had stopped asking. I mailed 42 invitations to my side of the family and carefully logged the details in my spreadsheet. For weeks, that column remained completely blank. I should have seen the warning, but I was used to their silence. 2 weeks after mailing my invitations, my phone buzzed at 8:43 in the evening. In the family group chat, Garrett had posted a photo with his girlfriend Danielle on a downtown rooftop. Her hand was raised to show off a ring with a caption that read, "She said yes. Engagement party June 15th. Save the date, June 15th. I stared at the screen, picked up my spreadsheet notebook, and flipped to the calendar tab. June 15th was highlighted in bright green. It read, wedding. I read his message 3 more times as my chest tightened. My hands remained perfectly still. I had learned a long time ago that reacting too quickly in my family always meant losing, so I texted Garrett privately, avoiding any exclamation points or anger. I just asked the question. I typed out, "Hey, June 15th is my wedding day. You know that, right?" I watched the 3 dots appear, disappear, and then reappear. His reply arrived 4 minutes later. "Yeah, but Danielle's family can only do that weekend. It is just a party, Fee. Your wedding is a whole different thing." It is just a party. I read that sentence 5 times. I set my phone face down on the counter, walked into the bathroom, and stared at my reflection. My wedding. The one I had spent 14 months planning, the envelopes I addressed by hand, the venue I paid for with my hard-earned savings, was just a party to them. Marcus found me gripping the edge of the sink. He did not ask what was wrong. He could see the devastation on my face, and he just held me close. Marcus saw me gripping the bathroom sink and knew instantly. "What did they do now?" he asked. I just showed him the text. He read it, set my phone down, and said, "We are not moving our date." "No," I agreed. "We are not." The next morning, I called my mother. I kept my voice completely level, using my cold financial analyst tone. "Mom, you know June 15th is my wedding. Can you talk to Garrett about changing his date?" Judith sighed. It was that dismissive sound that meant she had already decided. "Honey, your brother just got engaged," she said. "This is his moment. Can't you just be happy for him?" I told her my venue was booked and my invites were sent. "Well, maybe people will go to both," she replied, as if a wedding and a backyard barbecue 90 minutes apart were just a quick Saturday to-do list. Over the next 3 weeks, the wedding declines started trickling in. At first, it was slow. Cousin Amy, Uncle Brian, and his wife. Then, the trickling turned into a landslide. Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray, and even my father's old college roommate, Gary, whom I had only invited because my dad begged me to. One by one, the regrets column in my spreadsheet began to swell with red font. It did not take long to spot the pattern. Every single person who declined was someone my mother, Judith, spoke to on a regular basis. My suspicions were confirmed when Cousin Amy posted an Instagram story from Garrett's engagement party planning meeting. 12 people were crowded into Judith's living room with paper plates, my mother holding a clipboard like a general. Then, my Aunt Rosemary called. She was 66 years old, sharp-eyed and completely direct. "Fiona," she said, "your mother told everyone you were having a tiny, private ceremony and that you only wanted close friends there. Is that actually true?" My fingers clenched around the phone until they ached. "No, Rosemary," I said. "That is not true at all." A heavy silence stretched over the line. Then she spoke up, her voice softening. "Well, I will be there, honey. Save me a seat right on the aisle." She was the first person from my entire family to say yes, one of only 3. 3 weeks before the big day, I sat at our kitchen table at midnight, the blue light of my laptop screen glowing in the dark. The numbers were final and brutal. Out of 42 invitations sent to the Wells side of the family, exactly 3 were confirmed. My aunt, my roommate Sandra, and my childhood friend Becca. Everyone else had declined. 39 people who were supposed to love me had simply vanished from my life. Marcus walked into the dark kitchen, wearing just a t-shirt and boxers, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at my screen and saw the columns. He did not need to ask how bad it was. 3 out of 42. He pulled a wooden chair up right next to mine and just sat down. He did not give me any empty platitudes about how things would be fine. He did not try to offer a quick fix. He just shared the heavy silence with me. After a long moment, I shut the laptop. I am not canceling, I told him. I am not postponing, and I am certainly not begging my mother. Marcus simply nodded and said, "Good." The next day, his mother, Helen, found out the truth. Marcus told her because he knew I was too proud to ask for help. Suddenly, our guest list was flooded with Marcus's extended family, members of Helen's weekly book club, longtime neighbors who had watched him grow up, and even a retired couple from her church who said they would be absolutely honored to celebrate us. I opened up my spreadsheet and added a brand new column on the right side, labeling it as "The People Who Showed Up." I began typing their names, one by one. The list grew longer and longer, packed with strangers who did not know me, but agreed to come simply because Helen asked. That column became the heartbeat of our wedding planning. I had originally hoped for 42 loved ones from my side, and only 3 showed up. It is a quiet kind of heartbreak, and what happened on June 15th is something I still think about every single day. On June 15th, at precisely 6:32 in the morning, I was sitting in a wooden chair at our mountain farmhouse venue. The hairstylist was quiet, gently pinning the last soft curl into place. Outside the window, the Blue Ridge Mountains looked sleepy and blue, catching the very first hints of the summer dawn. The air was cool, carrying the sweet scent of fresh-cut grass and gardenia blossoms from the floral arrangements on the terrace. Helen walked in right at 7. She had driven up the night before and stayed at a cheap motel down the road just to ensure she was there the moment I woke up. She handed me a worn, dark velvet box. "This belonged to my mother," she told me softly. She opened it to reveal a tiny silver and pearl brooch, a family heirloom that she pinned right to my wedding veil. I couldn't help but check my phone just once. The family group chat was completely dead. There was no sweet text from my mother, no thinking of you from my father, and not a single word of congratulations from my brother, Garrett. The last message in that thread had been sent 3 weeks ago, showing a blurry photo of his cheap engagement party centerpieces. I locked my phone and slipped it into my bridal clutch, hiding it away. Out in the foyer, the welcome table was beautifully arranged with our guest book, a framed picture of Marcus and me laughing at the botanical gardens, and my calligraphy practice sheet from those lonely nights at the kitchen table. It was framed in rustic wood. I had almost thrown it out, but seeing it there reminded me of the beauty in trying, even when things are imperfect. I had spent 3 painful months preparing myself for the empty chairs, but mentally preparing is nothing compared to actually looking at them. The ceremony began at 4 o'clock in the afternoon under a bright sun. We had 72 guests in total, but they were almost exclusively there for Marcus. My side of the aisle had exactly 6 people. Aunt Rosemary sat in the front row, wearing a sharp navy dress and clutching a clean tissue in her hand. Sandra and Becca sat 2 rows behind her, joined by 3 of Helen's kind neighbors who had crossed the aisle because they thought my side looked too lonesome. Out of 42 invitations I hand-wrote, only 6 seats were filled. The photographer kept adjusting her camera lens, desperately trying to hide the vast, echoing sea of white folding chairs. I walked down the aisle entirely alone, a decision I had made weeks prior. I refused to beg my father to escort me when he had already made his choice clear. I was not going to force a sentimental moment that would have been a complete lie. So, I walked by myself down the stone path, stepping past the blooming hydrangeas and the potted lemon tree that had been placed near the altar for good luck. My ivory gown, with its delicate lace sleeves, caught the warm, golden glow of the late afternoon sun like a masterpiece from a gallery. As I walked, Aunt Rosemary caught my eye. She did not wave or break down in tears. She just gave me a slow, solid nod that said, "I see you. I am here. Keep moving forward." When I reached the altar, Marcus stood waiting in a dark charcoal suit, his eyes shining with tears. Marcus reached out, grabbed my hand, and squeezed it with everything he had. We exchanged our vows. His voice cracked with emotion when he promised always, while mine remained perfectly calm and steady. I had been practicing how to stay steady for 32 years. Afterward, the reception kicked off in the rustic barn behind the farmhouse. It was gorgeous, with warm string lights, long wooden banquet tables, and colorful wildflowers tucked into mason jars. A live jazz band played softly as our guests found their seats, and for the very first time all day, the space felt warm and complete. Marcus surprised me during our first dance with a sweet Norah Jones song, the very same track we slow danced to in his kitchen when we first decided to move in together. I rested my head on his chest and let everything else fade. Helen had spent over an hour on the phone with our baker, explaining the delicate balance of lemon zest to sugar. "Too much zest and the cake is bitter," she had warned, "but too little and it is just sugar with ideas." The final 3-tier cake was beautiful, frosted in smooth buttercream with fresh lavender sprigs. As Marcus and I cut the first slice, the crowd clapped and the photographer crouched down to capture the shot. Right then, my phone buzzed inside the clutch on our table. I tried to ignore it, but the screen lit up twice, and a cold dread filled my chest. I opened the bag to find a text from my father. "What did you do?" There was no congratulations, no apology for skipping our wedding, just a capital letter accusation sent from a barbecue 90 minutes away where they ate store-bought sheet cake. I stared down at the glowing text, then slowly looked around the room. Marcus was laughing with his best man, and Helen was sharing a warm moment with Aunt Rosemary near the desserts. Our beautiful lemon cake glowed under the soft indoor lights, entirely whole except for the slice we had shared. A genuine smile spread across my face, not out of spite or triumph, but pure, unfiltered relief. For 32 long years, I had desperately waited for my family to value me. In that single, quiet moment, I finally stopped waiting. I placed the phone face down on the wood table and chose to never reply. I returned to my husband, ready to dance the night away, finally free from their expectations, and ready to start my new life with the people who actually showed up when it mattered. That cheap blue icing on my brother's engagement cake was completely smudged. But my mother, Judith, was right in the center of the yard, completely unfazed. She floated between groups, touching elbows, laughing loudly, making sure everyone saw how thrilled she was to celebrate her son. My cousin Amy, the one who had posted that party planning meeting photo, stood by the cooler when she finally asked, "Where is Fiona? Is it not her wedding today?" My mother did not miss a single beat. She tilted her head, smiled warmly, and said that I wanted something tiny, just Marcus and me. "You know how private she is," she whispered. She spoke with the rehearsed ease of a stage actress, and nobody pushed back. Nobody questioned her, because she had been the narrator of our family story for as long as I could remember. My mother decided who was generous and who was difficult in our family, who was loyal and who was selfish. Everyone believed her because believing her lies was easier than asking the truth. At the party, my father sat in a lawn chair by the fence, beer in hand. He had texted me 20 minutes earlier, but got no reply. He checked his screen once more, put it away, and went back to his potato salad. Then my brother Garrett stood up to give a toast, raising a plastic cup to the woman who said yes. Everyone cheered. He did not mention me once, not even in passing. I was 3 minutes into my first dance at that moment. I did not know any of this yet, but I would. A week later, Aunt Rosemary went to Sunday brunch at a diner off Highway 74, a monthly tradition for eggs, toast, coffee, and gossip. At the table, Cousin Amy was scrolling through her phone, showing photos from Garrett's engagement party. Group shots, the backyard, Garrett and Danielle cutting the cake, everyone smiling. Aunt Rosemary looked at each photo, silently counting the faces. Uncle Brian, Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray and his wife, even her brother Donald, my father, sitting in that lawn chair with a paper plate on his knee. Everyone was there. On that very same day, her niece had walked down the aisle to a nearly empty garden. Rosemary pulled out her own phone, opening the wedding photos I had sent her the day after my ceremony. She looked at the farmhouse, the terrace, the string lights, Marcus and me at the altar, and finally, the chairs on my side. Just 3 people, surrounded by a sea of empty white seats on the green lawn. My aunt held both phones side by side. In one hand, a packed backyard. In the other, a painfully empty wedding aisle. She set her coffee cup down and looked straight at Amy. Amy, did Judith tell you about Fiona's wedding? Amy nodded, saying my mother told everyone I eloped and wanted nobody there. Aunt Rosemary's jaw tightened. She had actually been at my wedding. She watched me walk down the aisle completely alone, and she saw me force myself not to cry. She saw the 3 chairs that were filled on my side and the 39 that were completely empty. She did not say anything at the table, not yet. Instead, she took a screenshot of their conversation. Then she went home and sat at her desk for a long time. Rosemary was not a woman who acted rashly, but she was definitely a woman who acted. 3 days later, Aunt Rosemary created a new group chat. She added me, herself, Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray, Cousin Amy, and my father's cousin Louise, who had always been kind to me. She did not add my mother, my brother, or my father. Then she typed a message, attached 3 images, and pressed send. The first image was my cream envelope with a burgundy wax seal, sent to Derek 4 months before the wedding. The second was a screenshot of my RSVP spreadsheet showing 42 names, mostly marked as declined. The third was a photo taken from the back of the ceremony. It showed Marcus at the altar with a full house on his side, while my side had only 3 people sitting in a sea of empty chairs. Aunt Rosemary's caption was simple. Fiona did not elope, she wrote. She sent invitations 4 months early. 42 of us were invited, and I was one of only 3 who came. I was sitting at my desk at work when the notification popped up. I opened the chat and watched 19 minutes of absolute silence. Then, the messages flooded in like a broken dam. Derek wrote that my mother told him it was a private event. Amy said my mother claims I did not want a big wedding. Louise said she was told we were doing a quick courthouse ceremony, and Ray said he got the same story. I watched the screen scroll, realizing my mother had called every single one of them individually, tailoring her lies so they would feel no guilt about skipping my wedding. I did not type a single word in that chat. I just watched. For the first time in my life, I did not feel entirely alone with the heavy truth of what had happened. The new group chat existed for only 48 hours before it leaked. Cousin Amy, who was in both my family's main chat and Rosemary's new one, mentioned it to Garrett during a casual phone call about something else. She did not mean to start a massive fire. She just offhandedly mentioned that Rosemary had started a chat about my wedding, like someone talking about the rain. But my brother did not let it go. He immediately called our mother, warning her that a chat was circulating with my wedding photos and people were asking questions. My mother called Rosemary within the hour, her voice tight and dangerously controlled. My mother demanded to know why Rosemary was stirring up drama. Aunt Rosemary did not match her angry tone, calmly saying she was just correcting a lie. My mother hung up and called my father, who then called me. It was the first time he had dialed my number in 5 weeks. "Fiona, what is going on?" "Your mother is upset," he said. I stood in my closed office, phone pressed to my ear. "She should be," I replied. He told me this was tearing the family apart, but I told him this was just what happens when the family learns the truth. He sighed and asked me to just let it go for the sake of the family. He was not asking me to forgive. He was just asking me to be quiet so he would not have to deal with any of this. I said something then, a phrase I had been holding on to without even realizing it. "It is just a group chat, Dad," I said. The line went completely silent. He recognized the rhythm of those words, even if he could not place them. Then he hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone came alive in a way it had not since childhood. Cousin Derek called first, his voice shaky. "Fiona, I am so sorry," he said. "If I had known, I would have been there. Your mom told me you were doing something small, and I should have called you directly." I kept my voice even, not cold, just flat. "I know what she told you," I said. He admitted he should have checked, and I agreed. When he asked what he could do now, I told him he had just done it by calling. Amy called next, then Louise. Then Uncle Ray called, though he did not call me, he went straight to my father. "Don, did you know about this? Did you know Judith lied to every single one of us about Fiona's wedding?" My father's response, which Aunt Rosemary heard secondhand, was incredibly dismissive. "That is between Judith and Fiona," he said, as if what happened was just a minor disagreement over whose turn it was to host Thanksgiving. I did not reach out to my mother, my brother, or my father. I simply answered the phone whenever relatives called. I spoke clearly, without any embellishment. I gave them the exact dates, the numbers, and the timeline. Everything was already in the spreadsheet, and I just narrated it. In total, 5 people called to apologize. It was not the entire 42 people, but 5 apologies were far more than I had expected. Each of those relatives had looked up my number on their own. I opened my wedding spreadsheet that night and added a new column on the far right. "Called to apologize after finding out," I typed, highlighting those 5 names in green. The spreadsheet had started as a planning tool, then became evidence, and now was a record of who showed up late but actually showed up. 3 months after the wedding, Aunt Rosemary called me on a Tuesday evening. She did not do small talk. "Garrett and Danielle broke up," she said. I set down my coffee cup. "What happened?" I asked. Rosemary explained that Danielle found out about the group chat, confronted my brother, and she got the details from Amy, who heard it from Danielle's sister. The story went like this. Danielle sat Garrett down at their kitchen table and asked him directly if he knew his mother had told my entire family not to come to my wedding. Garrett admitted that he did. "And you did not say anything? You did not change your party date?" she asked. My brother replied that it was not his fault people chose his party over mine. It was the exact same sentence, word for word, that he had texted me 5 months earlier. "It is just a party, Fee." That phrase had finally followed him home. Danielle packed up and moved out within 2 weeks. She left her engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a note saying she could not marry into a family that does this. 2 weeks after that, Garrett called me, not to apologize and not to ask how I was doing. Garrett wanted me to help him break his lease early, claiming his landlord was being unreasonable. I stood in my kitchen, phone to my ear, and told him flat out, I am not available. Stunned silence followed. Fiona, come on. I just need you to look at the contract, he pleaded. I did not budge. I heard you, and I am not available. He hung up first. I set the phone down and looked at Marcus, who was cooking dinner. Garrett? He asked. Garrett, I confirmed as he turned back to the stove, noting the pasta was almost ready. 5 months after my wedding, my mother Judith called. No warning, just her name flashing on my screen at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning. Her first call since the group chat blew up. I answered because a part of me, the kid who was 16 and filing her family's taxes, still felt obligated to pick up. She did not say hello or ask how I was. No mention of my wedding, the group chat, or 7 months of silence. Instead, she just demanded, Fiona, I need you to help me with my insurance enrollment. Open enrollment ends Friday. She spoke as if I had been sitting by the phone waiting to serve her, just as she had for 32 years. I cannot help with that anymore, Mom, I replied. After a pause, she snapped, What do you mean you cannot? You always do this. I always did, I said, but I do not anymore. I could hear her breathing, processing my flat tone. She was not used to hearing no. Fine, she spat, and hung up to call Garrett. Garrett did not know the difference between an HMO and a PPO, so he called my father. But my father did not own a computer and had not logged into an online account since 2014. Predictably, Judith missed the deadline and was charged a penalty of $380. It was the first time in 18 years she had missed that window, because for 18 of those years, I had been the one filing for her. $380 was the exact cost of losing the family fixer. It was the most measurable consequence yet. Still, she never called to say she understood why I left, nor did she apologize. She just wanted her forms done. 5 months of silence, and her first call was about paperwork. If you have ever been the person your family only reaches out to when they need something, never just because they miss you, you already know how this felt. Stick with me, because this next part changed everything. 7 months after the wedding, Judith called again. Your father has a cardiology appointment on Tuesday, she said. He needs a ride. My dad had a minor heart condition that required checkups every 4 months. For 5 years, I had driven him to every appointment. I knew the doctor's name, the office floor, and how he loved getting a donut on 7th Street afterward as a reward for behaving. He can call a taxi service, I told her, refusing to fall back into my old role of being their constant chauffeur. Or Garrett can drive him, I suggested. Garrett is working, she countered. Well, so am I said. A heavy beat of silence followed, born of pure confusion. It was as if Judith was hearing a foreign language. She had spent 30 years issuing instructions and having them followed. The idea that I might be genuinely unavailable, not just inconvenienced, did not compute. She hung up without saying goodbye. My father ended up taking an Uber for the first time in his life. He was 61 years old and had never used the app. A stranger helped him download it, and his driver, a retired teacher named Gerald, talked to him about fishing the whole way. Dad called me afterward, not to complain or guilt me, which surprised me. He said, "The driver was nice, Gerald. He showed me how to use the app." It was the most normal thing my father had said to me in 7 months. We talked for 3 minutes. He asked about the weather in Charlotte, and I asked about his checkup. He said the doctor was pleased. It was a small step, but the closest thing to warmth we had managed. Then, Aunt Rosemary turned 67 in October. She hosted a birthday lunch at a restaurant in Charlotte with 18 guests. She called me on Thursday. "I want you there, and I want Judith there," she said. "This is my birthday, and I am not choosing sides." I told her, "I am not the one who made sides, Rosemary." "I know," she replied. "That is exactly why I need you in that room." I did not answer right away. I had spent 7 months building a life without my mother, and every wall I put up was there for a reason. Walking into a room with Judith felt like reopening a wound I had just figured out how to dress. But Aunt Rosemary was the one who actually showed up for me. She sat in the front row at my wedding. I owed her this. Or maybe I owed it to myself. "I will be there," I said. "Marcus, too." "Of course," she said. That evening, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my printed RSVP spreadsheet containing 42 family names and response columns. I folded the paper neatly and put it in my purse, not because I planned to use it, but because my family only ever believed what they could see with their own eyes. Marcus watched me zip my purse and asked, "What is in there?" "Insurance," I said. He smiled, knowing exactly what I meant. We had 3 days until the birthday lunch. 3 days until I would sit across from the woman who had emptied my wedding. I was not nervous. I was ready. On Saturday afternoon, we arrived at the Mediterranean restaurant. It had a private dining room in the back behind a heavy curtain. The long rectangular table was set with white linen, sliced bread, and sweating water glasses. Marcus and I walked in at 12:15. Helen had dropped us off, squeezing my hand before I stepped out of the car. "Call me if you need to leave early," she said. "I will be at the bookshop around the corner." Judith was already seated near the center of the table, where she always placed herself. She wore a cream blouse and pearl studs, her posture impeccable. When she saw me, her face reset into a practiced smile, the kind that touches the mouth but not the eyes. "Hello, Fiona," she said. "Hi, Mom," I replied. It was short and polite, just enough for a public room. Garrett arrived 15 minutes late, looking thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under his eyes. He wore a wrinkled button-down and sat at the far end, avoiding eye contact. My father sat between Judith and Garrett as a buffer zone. He nodded at me when I came in, and I nodded back, while Aunt Rosemary orchestrated the seating with a hostess's precision. Rosemary placed me directly across from Judith, with Marcus next to me, and Uncle Ray and Derek on my side. Judith was flanked by Garrett and my dad. Everyone talked about nothing. The weather was warm for October, the Panthers were struggling, and someone's neighbor got a puppy. Bread was passed and water glasses clinked. The air was polite and fragile, a tense atmosphere where everyone knew something was coming, but nobody wanted to start it. Rosemary stood up after the salad course, holding a glass of white wine. She tapped it with her ring, and 18 faces turned toward her. "Thank you for being here," she said. 67 years old, and I still do not feel it. After a few laughs, she paused. "I want to talk about family for a moment. Not the kind you see on greeting cards," Rosemary said. "The real kind. The kind that shows up when it is inconvenient." I set my fork down, and so did Marcus. He put his hand on my knee under the table. "This year," Rosemary said, "I watched something happen in our family that broke my heart." The room tightened. Judith's fingers curled around the stem of her wine glass. I went to a wedding this past June, a beautiful wedding at a farmhouse in the Blue Ridge. The bride was radiant. The groom cried. Rosemary paused. And on the bride's side, there were 3 people. Nobody moved. 3 out of 42 invited. Cousin Amy put her fork down. Uncle Ray shifted in his chair, and Derek stared at the tablecloth as Rosemary looked across the room. Rosemary looked not at Judith, but at everyone. "Some of you were told that wedding was private," she said, "that the bride did not want you there, and that she preferred something small." She let the words sit. I was at that wedding. I watched my niece walk down the aisle by herself, past 39 empty chairs without a single tear. And I am here to tell you, she wanted every one of you there. She sent invitations 4 months early, addressed by hand. Rosemary lowered her wine glass. "What you were told was not true." Silence. 17 people, 1 birthday lunch, and the longest pause of my life. Judith stood up, her chair scraping the tile like a blade. "Rosemary, this is not the time or place." Rosemary did not sit down. "When is the time, Judith?" 7 months of carrying this quiet pain had led to this moment. Sitting across the table, I watched my mother's face completely transform. That practiced smile she always wore just evaporated, revealing a raw, controlled fury. She turned on me, whispering harshly, "Is this what you wanted? To humiliate me in front of everyone?" I kept my hands in my lap, keeping my voice dead level. "I didn't plan this," I told her. "You always play the victim, Fiona," she hissed. "You have always been difficult." But then Uncle Ray spoke up, his voice low and careful. "Judith, you told me Fiona was having a private ceremony." My mother's mouth opened and closed, stammering that she was trying to protect me. "Protect her from what?" Ray snapped. "Her own wedding?" The table fell dead silent again. The waiter, approaching with a bread basket, took one look at us and quietly slipped away. Garrett stared down at his plate, his jaw clenched tight, refusing to look up. My father spoke in a soft whisper. "Can we please not do this here?" No one answered him. It had been 7 months of nowhere, and this was finally somewhere. My mother gripped the table, her knuckles turning white. I watched her face cycle through her classic options: anger, tears, and deflection. She settled on her favorite shield. "After everything I have done for this family." But Aunt Rosemary wasn't finished, and neither was I. "Fiona, do you want to say anything?" she asked me. I reached into my purse, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, unfolded it carefully, and laid it flat on the white tablecloth. 42 names were printed in 2 clean columns: send, date, response, and a column on the right for the reason given for their decline. It was a list of lies. Judith told me not to come, was told it was a private ceremony, or said Fiona wanted something small. I didn't read it aloud. I just placed it between the bread basket and the olive oil and let it speak for itself. Cousin Derek picked it up first, scanning until he found his name. I saw the slow, sinking realization hit his face. Amy reached for it next, then Ray. "I didn't come here to fight," I said, keeping my voice level. "I only came because Rosemary asked me to. But if anyone at this table actually wants to understand what happened on June 15th, it is all right there. The dates are the dates, and the texts are the texts." My mother pointed a trembling finger at the spreadsheet. "That proves absolutely nothing," she cried. "You are twisting everything." I looked at her calmly. Anyone can make a spreadsheet, she argued. I shrugged. Then call the people on it, I replied. Ask them what you told them. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I sat back down and took a sip of water, the glass freezing cold against my fingertips as I set it back on the linen and folded my hands. I didn't say another word. The spreadsheet sat there for the rest of the meal. They passed it around like a menu no one had ordered. Some read it carefully, some glanced and looked away, but everyone touched it. The document had said everything I wouldn't. Then my father spoke. He had been sitting in silence between Judith and Garrett the entire time, not moving, not defending anyone, not leaving. But now his voice was low and rough, like he had been holding his breath for 7 months. Fiona, I didn't know what your mother told people. I looked at him. The tablecloth between us suddenly felt wider than a 90-minute highway drive. You texted me, I said. What did you do on my wedding day, Dad? He flinched, barely, but I saw it. Your mother said you'd said something that upset the family. Something about not wanting them there. And you didn't call me to ask, I said. No answer. He just stared at his glass, condensation sliding down the side before my mother cut in, sharp and fast. Dawn, don't let her manipulate you, my mother snapped. And then, something happened that I had never seen before. Not in 32 years of holidays, arguments, and long silences. My father turned to her and said, Judith, stop. The entire room went dead still. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was the shortest sentence from a man who had spent his entire marriage saying, your mother knows best. In that single moment, he stopped saying it. Judith stared at him, her face turning pale white, then red. She grabbed her purse, pushed back her chair, and walked out. Garrett stood and followed her, his head down, his napkin falling from his lap to the floor. My father didn't follow. He stayed in his seat, hands flat on the table, staring at the space where his wife had been. He didn't apologize. He stayed. After 32 years of leaving with her, staying was the loudest thing my father had ever done. 2 chairs sat empty, Judith's and Garrett's. Crumpled napkins lay where they'd been dropped, next to a half-finished wine glass and an untouched bread plate. Life in the restaurant kept moving. Our waiter returned cautiously, refilling water glasses without making eye contact. Someone at the far end of the table cleared their throat. Rosemary broke the silence the way she broke most things, directly. Well, happy birthday to me. A laugh rippled through the room. It wasn't big, just the kind of laugh that comes from the bottom of exhaustion, when you've been holding your stomach tight for an hour and finally let go. Uncle Ray turned to look at me, his eyes steady. Fiona, I owe you an apology, Uncle Ray said. I should have called you directly before declining. I took your mother's word, and I shouldn't have. Thank you, I said. Derek spoke next. Me too. I looked at that spreadsheet and saw my name in the declined column. That's on me. Cousin Amy, Louise, and Patricia, a woman I barely knew who said she'd always liked me at Thanksgiving, all apologized. 5 apologies. Not dramatic or tearful, just quiet and direct. The way overdue things should be said. My father was still sitting in his chair, silent since he told Judith to stop. But now he reached across the table. His hand landed on mine, just resting there. He didn't squeeze and I didn't pull away. It wasn't forgiveness, I thought. But it was a start. Marcus put his arm around my chair. Rosemary picked up her wine glass. Now, she said. "Can someone please bring out the cake? I've been waiting an hour." For the first time all afternoon, our laughter was real. 3 days after that lunch, Garrett called. It was late, around 9. I was on the couch with Marcus watching a documentary. My phone buzzed on the table showing my brother's name. I picked it up and Marcus paused the screen. "Hey," Garrett said. His voice was quieter, rougher, like he'd been sleeping badly. "Hey, I didn't know Mom told everyone your wedding was private. I swear, I didn't know." "But you knew it was the same day," I replied, "and you didn't change yours." Silence fell between us, heavy and long. I could hear him breathing. I thought it didn't matter that much," he stammered. "My wedding didn't matter that much." "That's not what Garrett." I said his name the way I used to when we were kids and he was about to do something stupid. "You said it's just a party," I reminded him. "Those were your words." "The day I married the man I love and you called it just a party." There was more silence, then a sound I wasn't prepared for. His voice cracked. Not a dramatic crack, just a small one, like glass that had been sitting too close to the edge for months. "I'm sorry, Fee." I closed my eyes and breathed in through my nose. "I believe you're sorry things got hard for you," I said. "I'm not sure you're sorry for what you did to me." "That's not fair," he said. "Neither was June 15th. He didn't have an answer. I heard him sniffle once, then clear his throat. Can we maybe get coffee sometime?" "Not right now, Garrett," I said. "Maybe later, but not right now." I hung up, not in anger, not in tears, but in total clarity. The call lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know because I checked the log afterward. Old habits. A week after the birthday lunch, my mother left a voicemail. I was in the shower when she called. Marcus heard the phone from the kitchen and let it go. When I came out, hair wrapped in a towel, he was sitting on the couch with an expression I couldn't read. "Your mother called," he said. "She left a message." We listened to it together, the speakerphone turned low as if her words were fragile enough to shatter. Her voice was shaky, that controlled, practiced crying. It was the kind of crying where you can tell they practiced in the car before calling. "Fiona, what your Aunt Rosemary did was completely uncalled for," she said. "She had no right to do that in front of everyone. You should have been the bigger person. I was trying to make sure your brother felt special. Is that so wrong? I've always tried to keep this family together. I'm your mother. You don't just walk away from your mother." The voicemail ended. I stared at my phone. Marcus sat with his arms crossed. No apology, not one. Not for the lies, the calls, the empty chairs, or my dad's text. Just 7 months of silence. Be the bigger person, that phrase again. It is always the universal request of people who never actually intend to grow themselves. Marcus raised an eyebrow and said nothing. He knew this was mine to handle. I saved the voicemail, then opened a folder on my phone that I had created months ago and labeled Boundaries. I filed it alongside the screenshots and notes I'd been keeping ever since the group chat went live. I did not call back. She called herself my mother, as if that title alone should override everything she had done. But a title without action is just a word on a certificate nobody reads anyway. 2 weeks after the lunch, Marcus and I sat on the living room floor with a box of our wedding photos, which had been delivered in a beautiful linen album. We spread the pictures across the rug, looking through them one by one at the farmhouse, the altar, and the string lights. I paused as I flipped through our wedding album, past the shot of Marcus spinning me on the dance floor while Helen clapped in the background. One photo stopped me completely. Taken from behind the ceremony, it showed the aisle, the garden, and the Blue Ridge Mountains fading into blue in the distance. Marcus stood at the altar, hands clasped, waiting. But my eyes went to the chairs. On his side, a full house, with Helen in the front row beaming and clutching a crumpled tissue. On my side, there were only 3 people. Rosemary in navy, Sandra wiping her eyes, and Becca staring straight ahead trying not to cry. Between them sat 39 white chairs, completely empty. I held the photo tightly. Marcus leaned in and asked, "Are you sure you want that one framed?" Marcus was holding a close-up of us cutting the cake, which was objectively far more flattering. He pointed out there were better angles, but I just shook my head. "This is the truest photo we have," I told him, running my finger across the glossy image of those empty seats. Each one represented a name I had carefully written in calligraphy. Each one was a person who chose to believe a lie over an invitation. Those empty chairs taught me more about my family than 32 years of shared dinners ever did. We framed it and hung it in our hallway, right between the front door and the kitchen. Every morning, I walked past it on my way to brew coffee. Later that evening, I opened the wedding spreadsheet on my laptop, stared at the names for a long time, and then shut the screen. Saved, but closed forever. I have not opened it since. 1 year after the wedding, Marcus and I closed on the house with 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and a maple tree that turned vibrant orange in the fall. The kitchen had enough space for 2 people to cook without bumping elbows. Helen brought over a pothos vine in a ceramic pot she had painted herself, setting it on the windowsill. "These are impossible to kill, even for you 2, she joked. Around then, I got promoted to senior analyst at the firm, managing a team of 4. When my boss called me annoyingly thorough, I took it as the highest compliment. Aunt Rosemary visited once a month, driving down so we could sit on the back porch with sweet tea. We talked about everything except the things that still hurt, while she supplied us with Tupperware casseroles and endless church gossip. Rosemary had become the family I chose to keep. My father called every other Sunday, short, practical chats. "How are you?" "Good, Dad." "How is your heart?" "Doctor says it is fine." We would talk for 4 or 5 minutes. He never brought up Judith, and I never asked. It was not much, but he called, and I answered. Judith had not called, texted, or visited since that voicemail. I did not know if this was pride, strategy, or actual loss, and I did not ask. Meanwhile, Garrett moved to a smaller apartment and worked extra shifts at the dealership. Rosemary told me he had aged since Danielle left. He did not ask me for help anymore, not because he did not need it, but because he knew the answer he would get. The family fixer had retired, and they were all slowly learning what that meant. I saw my mother only once more, 14 months after the wedding, in a grocery store off Providence Road. I was in the produce section, squeezing avocados, when I looked up, and there she was, standing by the lettuce. She was completely alone. No audience, no phone in her hand. She looked different, thinner, her hair pulled back in a simple clip instead of the elaborate styling she always wore. She wore a cardigan I did not recognize, and her cart had only 4 items: milk, bread, bananas, and a single frozen dinner. Our eyes met across the display case. For a second, Judith looked like a woman who had lost something precious and had no idea how to name it. Her hand trembled on the handle. Her mouth softened. Then she spoke. "You should call your father more often. He misses you," she said. Not, "I miss you." Not, "I am sorry." Not, "I was wrong." She could not say it. Maybe she did not know how, or maybe she decided long ago that admitting her fault would cost far more than silence. "He has my number, Mom," I said softly. She gave a single tight nod, turned her cart, and walked down the cereal aisle without looking back. I stood there holding an avocado in each hand, feeling a heavy, tired sadness. I think a part of me will always want her to say those words, but I stopped needing them a long time ago. My wedding day was supposed to be the worst day of my life, overshadowed by empty chairs and a text from my father that still sits unanswered in my phone. I had a mother who chose her golden child over her daughter's biggest day. But here is what they got wrong. They thought their cold silence would break me. They expected me to come crawling back, carrying apologies I did not owe, begging for a seat at a table that was never mine. Instead, I built a brand new table, one where every single chair is full and everyone sitting there actively chose to be in my life. That is my story. Out of 42 invitations, only 3 people showed up, and it was still the best wedding I could have ever asked for. If this reminded you to protect your own peace, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.